You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow, and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
In 1984, a beloved small-town nurse vanished without a trace, leaving behind only her running car on a snowy road and a torn scarf in the snow. Whispers of betrayal, jealousy and violence spread quickly, and suspicion fell on 2 men, her devoted husband and her rumoured lover. For nearly 4 decades, the case remained a haunting mystery that divided the town and fueled endless speculation. Then, nearly 40 years later, a shocking discovery finally revealed the truth. One that no one in Lakewood ever could have imagined. If you love chilling true crime stories with twists you'll never forget, subscribe to Soul Studios and turn on notifications. Because the darkest secrets are always hiding in plain sight. A light snow fell on Lakewood the morning 29-year-old Evelyn Harlow vanished. Her car was discovered abandoned on a lonely road at dawn, the driver's door left wide open and the engine still idling. Evelyn was nowhere to be found. By nightfall, whispers of betrayal and violence spread through the small town. Evelyn's disappearance looked like an open and shut case of a love triangle turned deadly. But the truth behind what happened on that cold December day would haunt Lakewood for nearly 40 years, and no one could have imagined the dark secret that would finally come to light. Lakewood was the kind of place where everyone thought they knew everyone else's business. Tucked amid dense pines and blanketed by winter silence, the town seemed peaceful, until the Harlow scandal became all anyone could talk about. Evelyn Harlow was a beloved nurse at the local clinic, known for her warm smile and community volunteer work. Her husband, Frank Harlow, managed a logging company and was respected in town. To neighbours, the Harlows looked like the perfect family. But behind closed doors, Evelyn and Frank's marriage was crumbling. Over the summer of 1984, Evelyn had grown close to a newcomer in town, Daniel Whitaker, a charming mechanic with a troubled past who rented a room above the diner. What began as innocent chats over coffee quickly deepened into an affair. Evelyn confided in a friend that Daniel made her feel seen and alive in a way she hadn't in years. Unbeknownst to her husband, Evelyn was contemplating a life beyond Lakewood, a life with Daniel. Rumours of Evelyn's possible infidelity eventually made their way through the town grapevine. By late autumn, Frank sensed something was off. He noticed Evelyn taking late-night phone calls and finding excuses to slip away. Tension at home was at an all-time high. Neighbours recalled loud arguments through the Harlow's thin walls, and one described seeing Evelyn in tears on her porch one November evening. The stage was set for confrontation, and those close to the Harlows feared that it was only a matter of time before the situation exploded. On December 12, 1984, Lakewood woke to grey skies and a fresh layer of snow. Evelyn left home before dawn, telling Frank she had an early shift at the clinic. She never arrived there. Later that morning, her blue Chevy sedan was found on the shoulder of Old Mill Road, a seldom-used shortcut out of town. The car's lights were still on. On the passenger seat lay Evelyn's purse, contents spilled out, as if there had been a struggle. Police were immediately notified. At the scene, investigators noted footprints in the fresh snow leading away from the driver's side, disappearing toward the woods. They also found a single, chilling clue. In the snow near the car was Evelyn's scarf, torn and speckled with what looked like blood. It was clear to everyone. Something bad had happened. Frank Harlow arrived at the scene by mid-morning, frantic and confused. He told police that Evelyn left home around 5 a.m. His voice shook as he insisted he had no idea where she went or what could have happened. Not long after, Daniel Whitaker showed up as well. According to him, he had heard about the abandoned car over the police scanner and came to help search. The sight of the two men, husband and lover, both peering into the same empty car, sent a buzz through the crowd of onlookers. Many expected an explosive confrontation right there. But to everyone's surprise, Frank and Daniel barely exchanged a word, only pained glances. As daylight faded and search parties spread out, no one could find any trace of Evelyn aside from the bloodied scarf. To the townspeople holding flashlights in the darkening woods, it felt like the forest had swallowed her whole. The growing fear was palpable. If Evelyn was murdered, was the killer among them at that very moment? In the days following Evelyn's disappearance, the investigation honed in on the two men at the center of her life. Frank, the distraught husband, and Daniel, the passionate lover. Both were questioned for hours. Frank admitted his marriage had been in trouble, but denied any knowledge of Evelyn's fate. Daniel confessed to the affair, his eyes full of tears on the interview tapes, but swore he had nothing to do with Evelyn vanishing. Despite their outward animosity, both men agreed on one thing. They each pointed to the other as the likely culprit. Frank told friends he was sure Evelyn's dangerous new boyfriend had done something terrible. Daniel, meanwhile, claimed that if anyone had a motive to harm Evelyn, it was her jealous husband. The town quickly split into two camps, those who believed Frank's quiet sadness and those who trusted the earnest desperation in Daniel's pleas. Investigators found reasons to be suspicious of both. Frank had no solid alibi for the early morning hours. He claimed he was asleep at home, but no one could verify it. Daniel had been seen the night before drinking alone at the diner, appearing agitated. He left around 11 p.m. and his whereabouts until morning were unaccounted for. A search of Daniel's small apartment turned up a concerning piece of evidence, a photo of Evelyn he kept by his bed, which Frank angrily told police Evelyn had reported missing from their home weeks prior. To detectives, it looked like an obsessed lover's trophy. Yet for all the red flags, hard evidence was scarce. The footprints in the snow near Evelyn's car were smudged and led nowhere conclusive. The blood on her scarf was confirmed to be Evelyn's, but without DNA tests available in 1984, they couldn't trace it to anyone else. No weapon, no witnesses. As winter deepened, so did the mystery. By early 1985, leads were drying up. Frank Harlow, unable to escape the cloud of suspicion, grew reclusive. He stopped going to work regularly and was often seen at Evelyn's favorite spot by the lake, staring at the frozen water. Daniel Whitaker, hounded by townsfolk who were convinced of his guilt, eventually packed up and left Lakewood that spring. With both men effectively out of sight, one a pariah in his own home, the other a drifter on the run, the case stalled. A grand jury was convened in the summer of 1985, but without a body or definitive proof, no charges were filed. Evelyn's disappearance officially became a cold case. Years turned into decades. New deputies came to run the sheriff's department. Old detectives retired with the Lakewood mystery still haunting them. In coffee shops and church halls, the question lingered, did Frank Harlow or Daniel Whitaker get away with murder? Or was there something else, something unfathomable, lurking beneath the simple story of a love triangle? Few dared to voice an even darker theory, that perhaps both men knew more than they let on. The idea that the grieving husband and the spurned lover could have been hiding the same secret seemed too bizarre to consider, at least back then. For nearly 40 years, Evelyn's case collected dust. Then, in the fall of 2023, an astonishing discovery changed everything. Frank Harlow passed away at the age of 72, having lived a quiet, solitary life in Lakewood. While sorting through her late father's belongings in the attic of the old Harlow home, Frank and Evelyn's daughter, Amy, who was only a toddler when her mother disappeared, found a small wooden box tucked behind a rafter. Inside the box, Amy found two items carefully wrapped in an old handkerchief. The first was a gold wedding band, her mother Evelyn's wedding ring, which had been missing since the day she vanished. Amy's hands trembled. Everyone had assumed that Evelyn was wearing it when she disappeared, and that perhaps the killer took it as a morbid keepsake. Why was it hidden here in her father's belongings? The second item was a folded, yellowed note. It was a letter, written in her father Frank's shaky handwriting. As Amy read her father's words, tears welled in her eyes and a chill ran down her spine. In the letter, dated January 1985, just weeks after the disappearance, Frank confessed to what really happened. Evelyn had not simply been abducted by one man or the other in a fit of rage. She had died during a confrontation that spiraled out of control, and both Frank and Daniel were there. Frank wrote that he had followed Evelyn that early morning, suspecting she was going to meet Daniel to either reconcile or break things off. In the quiet woods off Old Mill Road, Frank arrived in time to witness a heated argument between his wife and her lover. According to Frank's letter, Evelyn told Daniel their affair had to end. She was going to try to fix her marriage, or at least leave town on her own. Daniel grew desperate. Harsh words echoed in the trees. Evelyn pulled away, slipping on the icy ground. Daniel grabbed her arm to beg her not to go, he claimed, but she wrenched free and stumbled. In a flash of rage or panic, Daniel shoved Evelyn. She lost her footing on the slick road shoulder and fell backwards. The crack of her head striking a stone was sickeningly loud in the morning air. By the time Frank reached his wife's side, Evelyn was unconscious and bleeding badly. Frank's letter described a moment that would haunt him forever. Evelyn's labored breaths turning to silence as dawn broke through the pines. She was gone. Daniel was hysterical, apologizing over and over, insisting it was an accident. Frank was in shock. Grief, anger, and a cold clarity washed over him. In that instant, he made a fateful decision. He realized that if authorities came now, Daniel would surely be blamed for Evelyn's death, and perhaps rightfully so. But Frank himself might be suspected as well. Their small town would never believe the death was accidental amidst such a bitter love triangle. And Frank couldn't bear the thought of a scandal, a trial, or perhaps losing his young daughter to foster care if he was accused. So, the two men who had been love rivals just minutes before formed a grim pact. Frank's note detailed how he and Daniel worked in silence to hide Evelyn's body. They moved her to a hollow near an old cedar tree in the woods and hastily buried her beneath the cold earth and snow. Frank removed Evelyn's wedding ring from her finger, whether out of love or guilt, he didn't say, and kept it. The two men agreed to stage the scene to look like Evelyn had been taken by a stranger. Daniel drove Evelyn's car to Old Mill Road and left it running, while Frank scattered her purse and tore her scarf, leaving it as a bloody decoy. When this macabre work was done, they parted ways without another word. At sunrise, Frank himself called the sheriff to report his wife missing, sounding every bit the worried husband. And Daniel played his role too, showing up to help with the search, feigning shock and innocence. Frank admitted in the letter that every time he saw Daniel in those hours, rage boiled inside him, yet they both knew they had to stick to their story. They avoided accusing each other too strongly, careful not to contradict on details. Each man lied to the police, to their friends, to everyone, all while casting subtle suspicion on the other just to keep investigators off balance. Amy dropped the letter, horrified and heartbroken. The very idea that her father and Daniel Whitaker, two men who professed to love Evelyn, had buried the truth along with her was almost too much to bear. She turned the brittle pages over to the authorities. After nearly 4 decades, the mystery of Evelyn's fate was finally solved, or so it seemed. When police searched the spot described in Frank's letter, they uncovered human remains and fragments of clothing that forensic testing confirmed to be Evelyn Harlow. It was a bittersweet discovery. Evelyn had finally been found, but long after the only 2 people responsible were beyond the reach of justice. Daniel Whitaker, it turned out, had died in 2001 in another state, taking whatever secrets he had to his grave. Frank Harlow's letter was the only first-hand account of what happened, and he could no longer answer for it. Authorities decided to close the case based on the letter and evidence, officially marking Evelyn's death as a result of an illicit affair turned tragic. But some questions can never be answered. Frank's letter claimed Evelyn's death was an accident, the result of an impassioned shove. Was that the truth, or a final act of self-justification by a guilt-ridden man? Perhaps Daniel had meant to do harm after all, and Frank softened the story to ease his own conscience. With both men gone, the full truth lives only in shadows. In the end, the 1984 love triangle that everyone thought they understood hid a twist no one saw coming. Two enemies bound together by a terrible secret managed to deceive an entire town for decades. The clues were there all along, in their guarded glances, in the strange stalemate of blame, but it was a truth too strange for anyone to consider. Evelyn Harlow's story stands as a chilling reminder that sometimes those we least suspect might be conspiring right before our eyes, and that even the closest of communities can harbor dark and deadly secrets just beneath the surface. In the end, two men who once despised each other became co-conspirators in a deadly secret, fooling an entire town for nearly 4 decades. Evelyn's story wasn't just about love and betrayal, it was about how far people will go to protect themselves, even if it means burying the truth. Two rivals, one secret, a lie that lasted 40 years.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained, and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.